So, on this mythical Sunday afternoon, as it's believed to be, let's talk about thinking as an altered state of consciousness because it's so common. Journals, articles, books, they all talk about thinking as being normal. And then anything that deviates from that, then that's the altered state of consciousness. But what if the reverse is true? What if thinking is weird? What if thinking is strange? Thinking is the anomaly. And all these other strange states are far more what we might call home. So I want to start off with a quote I thought very, very important. It's from an article that I've discussed many times. It's called "A Wandering Mind is an Unhappy Mind," and it's open access. So you just type that in, you'll get the whole article. The gist of it is that half the time, modern humans wander off from what they're doing into these mentally constructed worlds, these fantasies that are not reality. And that's what makes us unhappy. And I thought the article was so important, I actually took a quote from it, and I start the No Self, No Problem workbook with this quote. It summarizes so much so perfectly. So here's the quote. "The ability to think about what is not happening is a cognitive achievement that comes at an emotional cost." So our ability to wander off from what we're doing, which is unusual, new, most species don't do this, we probably only started doing this a fraction of the time ago. And it comes at an emotional cost. And that's mind wandering. That's what we do, well, half of the day, half of our life. And that's why meditation and mindfulness are coming back. And they're so popular because they're not new things. That is normal. Mindfulness, meditation, these are not anomalies. These are not altered states of consciousness. These are normal because whatever you're doing, if you're fixing a flat tire, if you're doing it, you're meditating. If you're playing an instrument and you're doing it without thinking, you're meditating. You're mindful. They're the same thing. Anything you are doing where you are right where you're at, when you're at that moment, that is mindfulness. That is meditation. Everything else, when we wander off from what we're doing, that is mind wandering. And so, so much talk about aliens, and it's kind of strange that there's not more talk about aliens. But if you're a sci-fi fan like myself, and Star Trek, and all these other aliens that we eventually encounter, there's always the language barrier. But we rarely think about the thinking barrier. In other words, it's just assumed that the aliens will think like we do, and that's because we assume thinking is just normal. Now, it's true that other aliens on different worlds, there might be some overlap where some thoughts may have been so useful that maybe we'll have those thoughts in common. But that's not necessarily the case. It very well could be that the aliens don't think at all. And you say, well, how could aliens have technology? How could they have all this, how could they get here and travel through space if they weren't capable of thinking? Well, think or don't think, consider, feel. The whole universe was constructed, was created without any thinking. And so thinking, again, is new in the universe, maybe 50,000 years old. And when you put that with the billions of years of, at least hypothetically, how old the universe may be, how old life may be, and then put our species, which may be 300,000 years old, and then you put this tiny little anomaly where we started thinking. And we're kind of coming out of it right now with all these books, and we're don't believe everything you think. And people with channels like my own, we're waking up to this idea that thinking may be the anomaly. And I was perusing Goodreads, and if you've ever checked this out, it's a pretty cool place. It keeps track of the books that you read, although I'm not very good at it. I read and don't update it. I'm not particularly good at that. But I wanted to check out how the first book, the No Self, No Problem, the initial book was doing. And the cool thing about it is it gives you what the most popular quote is. And I was really impressed because when I put this in the book, I thought it was terribly important to wake us up from this dream of thinking. And I wasn't sure how much it would catch on. But this was the most popular quote, at least according to Goodreads, from the original No Self, No Problem book. And it is, to think is to think in categories, and there is no way around this. And the reason that is so important is because it shows the illusion of thoughts, because when you see through the illusion of categories, which is the very means by which we think, there's no other conclusion that thoughts themselves are illusions. And I've done many videos on how thoughts are categorical, and there's no way around this. But now, as a species, we wonder how we get out of thinking with more thinking. And so we wonder about problems of like racism and all the isms, but these are all categorical problems. They're problems that stem from how we think and how we categorize. And we keep thinking somehow, if we create more categories, if we create more thinking, we'll get out of this thinking problem. And at the same time, it's slowly occurring to us that thinking may be the problem. Thinking is the new thing. Thinking is an altered state of consciousness, and it may not at all accurately reflect the world. And maybe if I process people individually rather than by categories, maybe we can get out of the whole mess we got into in the first place. And so mindfulness, being in the moment, being in reality, because you are reality rather than a thought about it, that is normal. That is home. Thoughts about reality, thoughts that make us wander off the path of reality, that's the anomaly. That's the altered version of consciousness.